Hello, everybody. Welcome to Audio Johnapedia number 44. It is February 8th, 2015. It's the first one of these episodes in quite a while, certainly the first one of the new year. I believe it's been since October, sadly enough, but just kind of waiting for a new topic to talk about, and I believe we have one set up here, and I think it's going to be a fun one to talk about. It's hockey season, so being as I'm not really a hockey expert, I'm a fan of hockey, but I'm not the most knowledgeable person. I decided I wanted to do a hockey show, so I invited my little friend Jason on. Jason, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. For the record, I don't want to say that I'm a hockey expert either, but I do follow the game closely, and I'm pretty sure I'm one of the 5 people in Kirksville that actually knows what hockey is. So it's thanks for having me. I'm very appreciative you thought of me, John.
Well, you would think Kirksville would have more of a hockey following because it's kind of a rural region. It's in a cold area. That's basically what Canada is. I mean, it makes sense there'd be some sort of connection there, but I guess not.
Yeah.
But you are from St. Louis, so it's not as though...
Well, right. I didn't grow up here and learn to love hockey. That's true.
Well, anyway, the reason that I have Jason here on is... we were sort of, weighing different topics we could discuss just because I wanted to do a hockey show because we haven't done a hockey show, I think, since we previewed the Blues Blackhawks playoff series, which was almost a year ago. So we were overdue. So what we're going to talk about is we each prepared a list of what we consider to be the 10 players that we would start a franchise around in the NHL going forward. This isn't necessarily a list of the 10 best players right now in hockey. This isn't necessarily a list of the 10 players we think have necessarily the most upside, but just 10 guys that if we had a franchise and we were starting from scratch, who we'd want on our team. Does it sound like the parameters you followed, or am I totally going?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's kind of where I went. I mean,
you could have a win now attitude and start putting Jerome McGinley or somebody. Not that McGinley would even be a top 10 player at this point, but certainly his age would preclude him more than anything.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think definitely the future aspect is more what we went for, not looking for guys that have kind of the championship experience that you would want on a team that's winning now, something like that.
Yeah, I'm curious, because we haven't discussed our lists at all. We've actually rigidly been like, no, we're not going to talk about who we have, because I sort of want the element of surprise here. I'm going to be curious the general approach that we each take, because there would be an approach where you could just take a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds. You could just go with the guys who are maybe in their late 20s or so, but are the best players. And there's really no right or wrong. It's just a matter of personal philosophy to some degree. So I'm curious what you have personally.
Yeah, I mean, something tells me I know you're all about upside, so I have a feeling you're going to have a bunch of 19 to 23-year-olds on your team. But maybe I'm wrong. But
well, I have some who aren't. So I think I have a healthy mix. I'm happy with my list, but as I said before, I'm not confident in my hockey knowledge, so I'm gonna probably waver on any pick that you even remotely criticize. So we'll see how this goes. All right, let's get the show on the road though. Why don't you start with number 10?
All right, now number 10. This is the outlier in a sense. I have a rookie at number 10.
Cool.
Rookie that, unfortunately, as St. Louis Blues fans, I've grown to already not like this guy very much.
Okay.
And that's Nashville Predators' Filip Forsberg.
All right.
Made the All-Star team this year as a rookie, and frankly, I mean, one of the big reasons is he's playing really well. He's 20 years old. And the way he just kind of carries himself, I mean, he's got a natural nose for the net, decent passer, just the kind of guy that I think could be a 40 or 50 goal scorer down the road. So
this is a well-rounded center who is going to scare us forever.
Pretty much. He's one of those guys that as soon as his contract comes due, I hope he signs with the Rangers or somebody. But like Rick Nash did with Columbus.
Or if he could just go to the KHL, just something to avoid the Blues and
the
whatever
treatment and go to the KHL.
It was like the Kovalchuk route. All right, All right, so one thing that we discussed before starting was we thought it would be funny if we had no overlap in our lists. And the very first pick is also my number 10. My number 10 is also Forsberg. Basically the same reasons you said. I'm a little hesitant because, since he is young, there's the chance that he's going to be a flash in the pan, but the guy looks good. His stats are good. The guy's 20 years old, and having a player that is that young and that talented wouldn't be the worst guy to build around.
I mean, and you can feel free to disagree with me, but I think he is a big, major reason why the Predators are leading, essentially the NHL.
Oh, definitely.
Because, I mean, you look at this team. This team's not drastically different. I know they got James Neal this year, and then they have, obviously, who I think is the best goaltender in hockey is Pekka Rinne.
Yeah.
But
Shea Weber. They have talented players, certainly.
But I think he's, they may be a solid, 64, 66 point team right now, but I think, I think he's that good that Forsberg can get you 12 to 14 points a season on his own, like team points. So.
Yeah, I think Nashville's playing a little bit above their heads at this point, but they're still good, and they're going to be good for a while because they have guys like Forsberg, they have guys like Seth Jones, they have just really good young talent who are going to be good for a while.
Absolutely.
All right, so we agree on number 10, which is random and weird, but
yeah.
Who's your number 9?
All right, number 9. Again, to a team that, as Blues fans, we've come to grow to hate over the years. Not as much now as they.
Okay, thank God, because this isn't going to be my guy. All right.
No, this is a team that moved. This is a young player for the Detroit Red Wings. I went with Gustav Nyquist at number 9. Okay. He's a guy, I believe he's 25 years old now. You look at him last year, though, in something like somewhere around 58 games, he scored 28 goals. And this year already he has like 20 goals, but he's missed some time. He's just a guy that I watch him, and, I watched him when the Blues played Detroit earlier this year in a game that was awesome and then sucked as the Blues tied it with under a minute left and then lost with 4 seconds in overtime. But he's a guy who I think has really, really, really benefited from playing with Pavel Datsyuk. I basically sort of a poor man's Pavel Datsyuk because, nobody's Pavel Datsyuk with just the ability to strip the puck like he does and things like that.
He's quite good.
He's got that kind of talent. I think Nyquist does. So, I went with him at number 9 because I think he's the guy with a lot of upside. And once again, a big reason why a team that maybe has been overachieving a little bit just based on the talent level and age, the Detroit Red Wings. So.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I didn't realize that Nyquist was as young as he is. I would have thought for sure he was like 30, just because it seems like he's been around a while. It seems like he's been productive for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think he came in the league. I think his first game with Detroit was sometime around 11 or 12, which I didn't necessarily realize. But last year he kind of had this big burst on the scene, and then he's established that going forward. So. Yeah,
this is only his 4th season. Wow. Maybe I'm confusing him with Zetterberg because they're both Swedish and they're both on Detroit. I don't know, but.
Yeah, Zetterberg seems like he's been there since like 1983, but that's just me.
Well, Zetterberg, I believe he finished second in the Calder Trophy the year that Jackman won it, which retrospectively is interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. Will a defensive defenseman ever win a major award again? Probably not.
Jackman ruined it for everybody. All right, so my number 9, speaking of defensemen, I have another rookie, actually. I went with Aaron Ekblad from the Florida Panthers. He's the youngest player on my list. It would be hard to pick a player who was younger than him. Let me pull up what his exact birth date is. But
he's pretty stinking young.
Yeah, he was an all-star this year as a rookie. I believe he's still 18. Let me double-check. No, he's actually not 18. He turned 19 yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, he's too old. Take him off the list now.
Grizzled, but he was first overall pick last year for the Panthers. He was first overall pick when he went to the OHL. He's a player who's had a lot of acclaim, which gives me less pause when it comes to trusting his productivity this season. But
yeah, Ekblad made my original list of 20. Did not make my top 10.
Yeah.
And I think as I went through, I had 5 defensemen in my 20, and I don't believe any of them made my top 10.
Wow.
Ironically enough, nothing against the defenseman position. Unfortunately, a guy like Ekblad, he's one of those rare kind of guys. Sort of like a Kevin Shattenkirk. I think he's got more talent than Shattenkirk, but he has some offensive prowess along with actual defensive ability. It's not like Erik Karlsson, who's a forward playing defense, or something like that.
Oh, you are not going to like my list going forward then, but we'll leave the surprise there.
You have Erik Karlsson on your list, don't you?
Maybe. But yeah, I mean, Ekblad's really a good sort of solid, sort of player to build around as far as a defenseman, because rather than just going with a guy who's going to be a strictly like stay-at-home, like Zdeno Chara sort of player, or rather than going with somebody that's like Kevin Shattenkirk, who's a great offensive player but doesn't provide a whole lot defensively. The guy's all around it. He does everything well, and he's 19, so he could really grow in any which way.
Yeah, one of those guys. And, Florida's a team that, they're not great right now, so he's going to get an opportunity to be a leader on that team sooner rather than later. And that's stuff that could be invaluable when you have, like, guys like a Crosby or something who get captainships and things going forward when they're younger. So I think he's definitely a guy who could fit that bill as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on to number 8. Who do you got at number 8?
All right, number 8. Jason goes completely different here. I got Ovi at number 8.
Oh, Alexander Ovechkin, I take it, you mean?
Yeah. Alexander Ovechkin at number 8. The big knock on here is, his age comparatively.
Yeah, older than...
he's not, old by any sense. And the guy, he just joined, became like the 5th player in history to score at least 30 goals in his first 10 seasons or something. I don't know. Maybe one other guy who may or may not be on my list could rival him as far as just being a pure scorer. But, pure scorer, I couldn't believe that, we had Crosby, Ovechkin, and then freaking Erik Johnson as the top pick the next year when the Blues had it. And Erik Johnson top of the list.
That's a funny thing, because you could say Erik Johnson shouldn't have been the number 1 pick that year, and they should have taken Jonathan Toews, and that's probably true, but even Toews would have seemed like a little bit of a downslide compared to Ovi and Crosby. But
oh, absolutely. And, you look at other guys. Phil Kessel was drafted pretty high in that draft, too, I believe.
Yeah. So, well, again, Kessel's not quite to that level either. So
no, not quite to that level, but and granted, Erik Johnson has become. He seems to have a better fit in Colorado, but yeah. But anyway, yeah, Ovechkin, I think his prowess kind of speaks for himself. He's a guy who's very fiery in the locker room, fiery on the ice. He's not afraid to fight guys. You don't want to have a lot of guys like him. I don't necessarily like his personality a whole lot, but, his game speaks for itself.
Yeah, Ovechkin made my 20 list, but again, the fact that he turns 30 later this year, the age was really a detriment, but certainly hard to argue against his ability, and it's not like he has a pronounced injury history where you're really that concerned about him going forward, but for how long is the only question I would have. But
yeah,
a solid pick, can't argue against it. You correctly predicted that I would start going a little bit younger. This is actually going to be the oldest guy I've had so far, just by virtue of being older than Ekblad and Forsberg. I went with Taylor Hall at number 8 from the Oilers. Having a little bit of a down season, so it gave me a little bit of hesitation, but had a really good year last year, has been really good the last several years, still young. Oilers have a lot of good young forwards on a team that nevertheless is pretty terrible. But
pretty awful, yeah.
Yeah, and I sort of wanted to limit my lists. Give some spoilers there of, I'm going to max out at 1 Oiler because I can't possibly rationalize putting more, but they have a lot of good young players. I just think he's the best of the group, and terrific scorer, overall player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's better than Nugent Hopkins or some of those other guys that the Oilers have seemed to collect over the years.
It's amazing what happens when you're terrible for a long time. You can keep getting number 1 overall picks.
Yeah, and and the Oilers have shown though that there's much more than just having a bunch of talented guys on your team. You need a goaltender for one, but they
probably can't all be forwards too. You eventually need some semblance of defense.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think with Taylor Hall, I won't lie, none of the Oilers made my 20, and it could just be a complete bias because the Oilers are that bad. I like your picks now that I think about it more and more, actually, as we sit here and talk, because I really like Taylor Hall's game. I think he's, a good, strong forward. He's got good speed, good goal scorer, probably the best passing forward they have as well. But it would be very interesting what he would do if he could go to a team that has established lines where he would, kind of anchor a second line or something on at least a decent team. I mean, the Oilers are just
dreadful. They are quite bad.
I mean, the Oilers versus the Sabres, that's a nail-biter.
I mean, the Oilers are at least a more interesting team because they have a lot more of the young talent. I mean, the Sabres have some young guys that are fine, but not quite as big of names. And
I mean,
Hall almost borderline is sort of a boring pick because he's young, but he's not one of the super young teenage guys. He's good, but he's not Ovechkin, for instance.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't argue against him.
No, absolutely. I think, like I said, he didn't make my 20, but I will not rip you for that pick. I like it. And like
That's
you said,
good.
still tons of upside. What is he, 22, 23?
I believe he's 23.
Okay. So he's still younger than me.
Yeah, it's weird that I'm looking at a guy and thinking, wow, he's kind of old compared to the last couple guys, and he's 3 years younger than me. This whole list was so depressing to make. There were only a couple of guys on my short list that are older than me, and I was like, oh wow. I guess it's too late for me to become a great NHL player.
Well,
might be a little late.
Maybe you can still become a great KHL player. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be a tough one too. May have to learn Russian a little bit to negotiate my way around complete inability to play sports.
Those are minor things. You can overcome those.
Yeah, a little adversity to overcome. I'll work on it. All right, who's your number 7?
Number 7, all right. I had to put this guy somewhere on my list, and basically I just threw him at 7. I didn't like putting him on there, but I put Crosby at number 7.
Okay, so similar to Ovechkin in the sense of...
I mean, I probably would have put him higher on the list, but the injury thing has just become worrisome with him. I mean, it's every season he's missing chunks of time due to something. The head's always something you got to worry about, which he's had multiple concussions. But when this guy's healthy, I still don't think there's any question he's the best player in hockey.
Oh, I agree. Definitely agree.
Is just phenomenal to watch him play. I don't fawn over hockey players very often that don't wear the blue note, but gosh dang, watching him. I mean, I won't say he's Gretzky, but gosh dang it, he's the modern day Gretzky. Can just do it all, and
I mean, certainly among the guys that are at the top of the list of best players in the NHL right now, he's the one who's stylistically the closest to Gretzky in terms of just complete offensive game. The guy does everything. I mean, the guy can shoot like crazy. The guy's a great passer, elusive, all that.
And due to injuries, the guy is now playing on a line with David Perron. But
yeah. Poor guy.
And maybe his, passing. He's a great passer, and then he gets to set up guys like Malkin when Malkin's healthy. So his stats are always going to be there. I mean, as long as he's on the ice. So I went with the easy, safe pick. Another guy who's around age 28, 29, 30, whatever he is. But
yeah, I think he's 27 actually.
Is he that much younger than Ovechkin?
He's a little bit younger than him. Yeah, let me pull up exactly how old he is.
27. If he can stay healthy, I mean, he's the kind of guy who could play till he's 40 if he stays healthy. I mean,
but that's a big if, obviously.
Especially in today's NHL, it's a huge if. But
and yes, he is 27. He actually turned 27 and a half yesterday.
Yep.
He was, along with one other player, and maybe we'll mention him later, the two guys that I weighed the most putting on my list that I didn't put on my list because, to reiterate what you said, I believe Crosby is the best player in the NHL when he's healthy. It's just a matter of staying healthy. Even the age isn't as big of a factor against him, though it is a little bit. It's more of the, do I want to build around a guy that I'm not positive he's going to stay healthy?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, in a weird way, he's almost a little bit like Lemieux was when Mario Lemieux was playing in Pittsburgh, which was this guy is incredible when he's playing, but there's always the risk of him, will he stay healthy or won't he?
Yeah. And, and I think something else that weighed on me is just that leadership. He's the kind of guy who he walks into a room, if he says something, you're going to have younger guys who are going to listen to everything he says. He seemed to show that a little bit more. Ovechkin doesn't necessarily seem to kind of be the guy who would take guys under his wing, but I think from a leadership perspective, even if he is injured, I still think he offers a lot to your team just with his knowledge and ability inside the game that he can give better insight to younger players. So I think that weighed a little more into putting him on the list, I think, with me as well.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while you'll hear somebody try to make an argument for somebody else as being better than Crosby. And like, if you want to make the argument based on health, I get it, but otherwise, it seems like it's just sort of contrarianism for the sake of it. The guy's really good. All right, number 7, I went with another player, slightly older, even still from what Taylor Hall is, though younger than who you had. A player that's I'm a little skeptical on, but the guy, whenever he flashes it, is just really good, and I can't deny that, is John Tavares from the New York Islanders. Maybe not a great two-way player at this point, but the guy can score in bunches. He's still young. He's been good for several years now. Just looking at, the guy hasn't had really a bad year in the NHL, unless I'm just not going far enough back. At which point he would have been very young at the time, anyway.
I mean, we're only number 7. We may or may not hear from John Tavares later on my list. So I mean, I'm a big fan of John Tavares. I think, I think this year, just watching him play, he's finally learned what it's like to captain a team. Maybe he's got a little more drive because he's playing on a team that's a lot better. I mean, we saw what he did, was it last year when they played the Pittsburgh in the playoffs and took him to 7 games or whatever? I mean, the guy is prolific offensively. I mean, we saw in the All-Star game. Just kidding. You can't use the All-Star game for anything.
Yeah. We saw such defense in the All-Star game, as always.
Yes, exactly. But, I think he's just, a lot of these guys, with me, it's just the eye test, too. I mean, and, I haven't been watching hockey players for 40 years, but when I see that guy, just the way he skates and carries himself offensively, like I said, yeah, he's not a great two-way forward, but honestly, there's not very many guys that you can necessarily compare to a LeBron James where they're a top prolific scorer and a top prolific defender or defensive forward in the NHL.
I mean, there really aren't any. Like, you look at the guys that win, like the Selke, and it's just a guy that's, okay defensively, but usually it's because he can also play offense. It's just not a thing that happens, really.
I remember the year that the Blues traded him, there was a giant push from the blogging community in St. Louis to get Jay McClement to win the Selke.
I remember that, yeah.
I was a part of that campaign, but...
Well, he's the sort of guy that never wins the Selke but should get consideration. The reason he wouldn't get it is the same reason that, like in baseball, you'll see a lot of guys who aren't very good hitters not winning Gold Gloves. It's because it in reality becomes an award for the best two-way player rather than the best at this specific aspect.
Right, and it's, so I don't necessarily hold that as much as you did there, but...
Yeah, I mean, I still do have him as number 7 on my list. It's not like I'm totally holding against him, but yeah.
And so he's not bad, right? Absolutely.
All right, let's go on to number 6.
Number 6, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the Tarasenko Show. I put Vladimir Tarasenko at number 6. I will say he is the only blue on my list, although the last person I cut from my top 10 was Jaden Schwartz.
Wow.
I mean, being St. Louisans, maybe we have a much higher opinion of Tarasenko than others would, but, every national analyst I've seen talk about this guy is, one of the quickest releases. I mean, saw today what he did on that breakaway. He made Crawford look silly. I mean,
that was a beautiful goal.
It was, I do think he has a tendency, like on that breakaway, to not play defense. I mean, he's looking to puck every time he gets it, but you don't necessarily mind it. But in being St. Louis and see his interviews, he seems he's very team oriented, kind of guy, very humble. After he scored the hat trick in Dallas, he was still just as happy as could be, but not like a yay, look at me kind of deal. And then, obviously the flashes of brilliance, the beautiful goal he had today, and the goal he had against the Rangers earlier in the year, which, that was just sick.
Yeah. I mean, Tarasenko, I think before this year it would have been considered somewhat crazy to put him on the list, but he's definitely had a big breakthrough this year. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I believe I saw tied for 4th in the league in goals with 28 now. I think I saw on the broadcast. I mean, he's finally making that leap to what we thought he was going to be, when he came over. And, I was at his first game after the strike season, the strike shortened season or whatever. when he had those 2 goals against Detroit. And I mean, we all thought after that second goal where he just went through the entire defense and then roofed one on Jimmy Howard, we're like, okay, this guy's going to be the next Brett Hull. And then injuries have kind of set in, but I think this year he's kind of showing, I can be that good of a goal scorer. So
yeah, I think he's actually improved a little bit as far as defensively. Like, he's definitely not a great defensive player, certainly, but I think he's not quite to the point of Hull where Brett Hull was sort of notorious for just not caring at all on defense. I mean, and Tarasenko, you're not going to put him on the penalty kill by any means, but he's becoming at least competent at it. And I'm wearing a Tarasenko jersey as we speak, so I'm definitely a fan of the man as well.
Yeah, and I think, too, I mean, you have to look to it. It's a product of the coaches you play for. I mean, Hitchcock's not going to let you just slide by not playing any defense. You do that, he'll have no trouble benching you. So, I mean, I think we've seen him do that with Lindstrom a little bit this year. But
yeah.
I digress.
Well, Lindstrom's not really great at offense either, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, he's what he is.
Sort of a zero-tool player of sorts, which is probably a little harsh, but, All right, for number 6, I actually have the oldest player on my list. He's, I believe, the only 25-year-old on the list. And I feel like this could be controversial in some circles, but I'm sticking with it. I'm going with PK Subban of the Montreal Canadiens. I think the guy just, I'm not sure if he's the best defenseman in the NHL, but he's up there and still relatively young. Definitely a great, at leading their power play. His scoring is terrific, but unlike a lot of the guys who are at the top of scoring, good defensive player as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that he gets a lot of criticism, but I think that's more a matter of expectations than of him not being a good player. And, yeah.
Yeah.
His name's PK. I like having a defensive player named PK. It's a nice touch.
Be a good defender then and play the penalty kill, which he does. I mean, and he actually, I forget if it was this year or last year, he had like a highlight reel goal that was just kind of insane. Nobody'd ever really seen Subban do something like that. And, he's a guy that I think, like you said, expectations were sky high because he was going to Montreal. He kind of was going to be there, all right, we're going to be back, we're going to be relevant again kind of player. But, still good. He made my top 20. He made my initial list.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit on the. I would have questioned if you didn't at least consider him. I can see him not being in the top 10, but the guy's a really good player. It's hard to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. My first introduction to really PK Subban, because he really doesn't get a lot of play over here in the States, hardly at all, or compared to what I think he should get. Defensively here, it seems like, you get a lot more of the Charas, the Shea Weber, Seth Jones kind of guys.
Well, you lean towards guys that are playing in the United States or occasionally guys that are playing in English-speaking Canada. The Montreal guys sometimes go a little bit under the radar here.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. But, a good pick. He's a guy who can anchor you defensively, and who knows, maybe with his connections, I know his brother's a goalie.
Yeah, I've heard that there's like a young sort of developing like Subban dynasty coming on. Or maybe that's going to be the new Sutters. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember Subban was playing goalie for the Canadian junior national team. I think it was the year they won. I remember watching it, because he wasn't playing goalie the year that Karlsson had the winner. Because I'm pretty sure that was Jake Allen playing goalie that year. But
yeah.
PK Subban, good pick.
All right. Well, do you want to feel the press? I just pulled up the 2007 draft, the year that Subban got drafted 43rd overall. You want to talk about some of the Blues that were drafted ahead of him?
Well, let's see, the 2007 draft. Oh my goodness!
I believe I counted 4 guys drafted by the Blues ahead of him.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, let's hear it.
Number 13 overall was Lars Eller.
Oh, who now plays for Montreal?
His teammate, yeah. Number 18 is Ian Cole. I think I'd rather have Subban.
I'd rather have Subban than Ian Cole too, but at least Cole's playing in the NHL for the Blues still.
There's that. Number 26 is David Perron, who's on the Penguins and was traded for Magnus Paajarvi, who's in the minors, but
yeah.
nevertheless. And then we had one more. It was I'm not even sure if I'm getting the pronunciation right. Is it Simon Hjalmarsson?
Something.
I mean, he has the same spelling last name as Nicholas Hjalmarsson, so I'm guessing that one, but I'm not sure on.
It might be Simone. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I'm not familiar with him. Regardless, it looks like he's playing in the K.
Is he playing in the KHL?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I would take now. If Lars Eller was still with the Blues, I would take him. I think he's kind of developed into a pretty good player over there, but.
Yeah, Eller's improving, certainly, but yeah. The Blues...
Halak trade? Is that how he ended up there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was Eller part of the Halak trade? Is that how he ended up there?
I think so. Let me check on that. I'm fairly sure that's what it was. I think it was Eller and maybe some other smaller part. Let's see here. He was traded along with Ian Schultz for Halak, is what it was.
I remember Ian Schultz.
I don't, but yeah. All right, number 5. Who do you got?
All right, number 5. I went a guy who I really wanted to put higher, but I didn't. Went out to the East Coast, Philadelphia, put Claude Giroux at number 5. He's a little older. He's 27, but I mean, the guy like. Maybe I'm real partial because I have his rookie card and I want him to be really good, so it's worth money. But just watching him, he's the kind of guy who I feel bad because he plays in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he is super good.
Philadelphia just seems like one of those teams that's just kind of stuck sort of in neutral. Like, they're not a terrible team, but there's not really a whole lot of reason to think they're going to get any better than the sort of adequacy to mediocrity they are right now.
Yeah, and... well, their biggest problem is they haven't had a goaltender in maybe since Ron Hextall. I don't know.
Do they still have Mason? Who's their goalie? I'm trying to think.
They had Steve Mason. They had somebody else too. I'll pull it up here and find it.
They had Emery for a while.
They've had Ray Emery. They had.
He was a starter though.
Yeah, I think he might have gone after someone else. Well, they had.
All right, Mason's on the Flyers.
Okay. So maybe he is still.
So, yeah.
Steve Mason and Ray Emery are their goaltenders right now.
It's not great.
Yeah, that's. And Steve Mason had that really good rookie year with Columbus, and since then it's just been a goalie.
Yeah. But, either one of them's okay as a backup, but you probably don't want either one starting a lot of games for you.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess getting back to Giroux, I mean, you look at what he's done because I was looking and him and. There's one other Philadelphia player that I'm blanking on right when I was looking at just like the top stat leaders.
Voracek, maybe?
Yeah, Jacob Voracek. He's vaulted his career. I put Voracek on my list, but then when I looked at it, Jacob Voracek, his career high in points for a season is 62. Not, a guy that you necessarily be like, oh, well, his career high is 62, I want to build around. He already had 58 as of like 5 days ago when I was looking at this.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. I looked at Voracek too, and that was the same reaction I had.
I mean, and you look at, okay, well, why is he doing better? Okay, because Giroux, his goal stats, I don't think were like super high this year, if I remember, but I believe his assists were like ridiculous.
Yeah.
He may be one of the best passing. Yeah, he has 16 goals and 36 assists this year.
He's
in 50.
Setting up Voracek quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I think he's a guy. I'd put him as a top 5 passing forward in the league. Also one of the fastest guys in the league. He's not, not real big. He's only 5'11", 172 pounds. But, I mean, the guy was drafted 22nd overall. So, the NHL seems like where you can actually look at where a guy is drafted, and that's a pretty good, tell possibly of what their skill level is.
Oh, so. Hey, that's another guy the Blues could have had instead of Erik Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt that he was on their radar at number 22, but yeah. Even so.
What about number 5 for you, man?
Number 5, name we just talked about, Vladimir Tarasenko. I was a little concerned whether that was too high or it'd come off as homerish, but if you have it number 6, I feel okay with it. Basically what I mentioned before, the guy's really had a great breakthrough of a year. I feel like you would see flashes of brilliance in his rookie season, but he wasn't quite there. In addition to the fact that he was hurt, started progressing even more last year, and then this year he's been one of the best players in the league. He's nationally definitely increased his profile quite a bit. I'm excited just going forward to have him around. He's a very fun player to watch. As I mentioned before, a little light on the defense, but I mean he's as fun of a player to watch as I think the Blues have ever had, at least since I've been watching, and that includes a couple years with Hull in there.
Yeah, I mean, like I know we've had discussions before, either in person, on Twitter, or whatever. Like, he's a guy that when the puck is on his stick in the offensive zone, everybody gets on the edge of their seat because they know he can score. And,
I mean, when's the last time the Blues had a guy like that? I can't even.
I mean, it has to be Hull. I mean,
yeah. I mean, they've had guys who would have sporadic high goal seasons, but even then, I didn't quite feel that same sense of inevitable greatness.
I did, that one season Brad Boyes had, I didn't really feel.
I wasn't going to bring up Brad Boyes, but if you're going to, I guess.
I mean, granted, most of his just came from that slap shot from the half boards on the power play, it seemed like. But yeah, I mean, he's just, and the thing is, you can tell just in his body, he put on a lot of muscle in the off season too.
Yeah.
So he's a guy who's going to put in the work. He seems to, at least. He's not just going to be like, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm good with where I'm at. So.
All right, let's go on to your number 4.
All right. Earmuffs, John.
Oh, God, you're not going to do this to me, are you?
I want to talk about this but I'm going to go. My number 4 guy had an altercation with a cab driver one time, but I'm going to look past that.
I think a lot of guys have had altercations with cab drivers. They, had a fare, they paid the fare, all that happened.
Well, this guy apparently change was not had by the thing, so I put Patrick Timothy Kane II at number 4.
You don't know how hard I'm biting my tongue right now. You have no idea.
I just imagine you're flipping me off right now and cursing me under your breath.
I'm actually not, but
okay.
Maybe later, but go on.
Yeah, but, I mean, okay. We don't have to talk about this long if it pains you. It seems like, when I want him to do good, like when he has 2 shootout attempts in the same game for Team USA, he sucks. But gosh dang, it's pretty good. 26 years old, so a little older, but gosh dang it, the guy could just flat out play. Just think, if the Blues would have had the number 1 pick just a year later, you could be cheering for this guy. So,
in a way, yeah.
I mean, And
I cheered for Leonard Little. I've cheered for bad people before. It's not, but
it's true. It's true. And I mean, Patrick Kane. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I necessarily think he's great, but not to mention a lot of why I don't like Patrick Kane. I joke about things like the cab driver incident over whatever it was, 23 cents or whatever.
It was 20, but yeah.
Cents. But the reason I hate him is because he plays for the team I cheers for as a rival, and he's good. I mean, that's the ultimate reason you hate a player for the most part. So, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the guy has done nothing but, I mean, he's I think he's got 26 goals this season, but he can pass. He's faster than all get out. I mean, I don't feel like I have to, we're getting to the point where you don't have to say a whole lot about your top picks because they're just that good. But I think Patrick Kane's really good, and I think he's growing up a little bit from some other, bad instances he's had.
I would hope so.
Yeah. But,
all right. Patrick Kane is a very talented offensive player. He did not make my list. He did not make my top whatever, but he's very good at what he does. Okay, yeah. I think I was very well behaved there.
You were. I'm proud of you.
Okay. I expect you to show the same restraint because at number 4 I have Erik Karlsson.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Erik Karlsson, who is 24 years old, former Norris Trophy winner, has been one of the top offensive defensemen in the NHL for quite some time. As you mentioned before, his defense isn't, it's not all-world defensive, but I would sort of question the notion that he doesn't have some defensive ability. don't have the numbers in front of me right this second to exactly defend that, but I will blindly, angrily defend this pick.
Okay, that's your right.
And he also never beat up a cab driver, so there's that.
Okay.
And hey, I have a number 4. I don't have a number 1, so there's that.
Hey, Karlsson, I mean, he made my initial list. I mean, the guy is...
Okay, so you at least gave him consideration. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I didn't just dismiss Karlsson. I mean, I would personally make the argument that Shattenkirk is better defensively than Erik Karlsson is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just being jaded by watching Shattenkirk a lot, but
Erik Karlsson's the best all-around offensive defenseman I've seen in my lifetime, I think.
Oh yeah, he's definitely the best one going right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. I mean, on a team that's not great.
You know? I think it's possible that if he got on a team that was better than Ottawa, I'm not saying he would be a great defenseman by any means, but I think he would be a little better. I don't think it would be quite as...
You know, he sort of seems like a guy who, because, you know, they're not a great offensive team, that they depend on him a little bit more to score. Maybe he wouldn't have to be as offensive if he was on a better offensive team.
Yeah.
But,
all right.
Yeah.
All right, I'm very excited and curious about your top 3 because none of my top 3 have been said by you so far.
Okay.
So either we are in total agreement or we're going to be quite differing on some players.
Well,
who's your number 3?
My number 3 has already been said by you.
Okay.
I put John Tavares at number 3 on my.
Yeah, you mentioned before Tavares. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, like I said earlier, I just think he's that good. I think he's just scratching the surface. I could be completely wrong, and maybe he's hit his potential, but I think he's a guy who might just be a slight little bit of a late bloomer and could be that good to lead a team. So, I mean, we talked about him earlier, so I don't think we need to talk a whole lot about him, but I put Tavares at number 3.
The Islanders are a team that I find, whenever I've seen them play recently, they're just a fun team to watch. And my fondness for Jaro Halak still is a thing. I like the idea of Tavares and Okposo just playing together, and just Tavares just shooting like crazy, and Okposo just being a huge guy in front of the goal whenever it doesn't go in, which is increasingly rare.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, you know, like what the Blues did with Tkachuk later in his career. Now, they didn't have anyone as talented as John Tavares to shoot the puck, but...
They did not. That would be an accurate assessment.
Surprisingly, Marty Reisner was not as good as John Tavares.
Not quite, yeah.
But...
All right, so, yeah, can't argue with the pick. Obviously, he was on my list earlier. Number 3 for me, this was a player that I really had a hard time evaluating. I knew I wanted him on my list, but I could have rationalized going lower, maybe even a little higher, who knows. But I went with Nathan MacKinnon from the Colorado Avalanche. The guy's 19 years old, and he's not having nearly as good of a season this year as he was last year. But last year he just impressed me like crazy, and he was due to regress a little bit just because the Avalanche as a whole were a little bit above their heads last year. But the fact that he was, you know, the number 1 overall pick says to me that NHL teams knew he was going to be good and just completely lived up to it last year. Again, I'm a little concerned about him not, you know, quite being what he was last year, but I think that a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that he's 19 years old. His birthday, September 1st, 1995.
Holy crap.
So yeah, I was in first grade. You were in kindergarten, I believe. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to drink heavily now, but
it's okay. I'm here for you, bud. Yeah, no arguments with the pick of MacKinnon. To be completely honest, he's my number 2. So
it's a logical transition. So that means one of my top 2 is somebody you're really not keen on. So I'm excited about this.
This is interesting, and I mean, something tells me my number 1 didn't even make your list. So I think it's interesting.
Well, it's not Kane, so he might have.
Well, okay, that's true. But you know, MacKinnon, yeah, it's all upside with him. You see the flashes that he's had, and he's the kind of guy that I'm real puzzled when I watch him play. Mostly because, you know, like when I first saw him play, I was just kind of like, how'd this guy go number 1 overall? but I realized the reason it looks like he's not like super sensational is because he's just so smooth and he makes it look that easy when he plays. Like, you know, it's sort of like Tarasenko to an extent, but you know, it's almost like a time you're like, gosh, is this guy just taking time off? What's going on? But he's just that good, and it's not necessarily like plays that guys have to work harder at. They're just that easy for him. So, I mean, I think if they get a few more pieces there in Colorado.
Him and Landeskog and all those guys. I mean, they have some Matthew Shen. They have some really exciting young players, and hopefully they don't figure it out for the sake of the Blues. But yeah, they might. And they have Erik Karlsson, obviously, too.
Oh, of course, Erik Johnson's the key.
He's the main guy you think of, yeah.
But yeah, so MacKinnon was on number 2, so I guess we can just transition back into your number 2.
All right. Number 2 is a guy that I'm going to be honest, I wasn't that familiar with until maybe 2 years ago, but the guy's been just totally on fire. And it's Tyler Seguin from the Dallas Stars.
Tyler Seguin,
23 years old. Looking at, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't really understand exactly how Hockey Reference calculates their point shares, but looking at just eyeballing it, they seem to be relatively on top of things. I believe he's number 3, at least among guys I bothered to write down. Last year was even better. I think he was number 2 to Crosby in the whole NHL last year. He's 23 years old. For some reason, the Boston Bruins traded him and others for Louis Eriksson, who is a fine player, but Seguin, it's looking like a steal. Like, it's looking like it was just a very bad deal. And I mean, Seguin had a couple years in the NHL to start off where he didn't look like he was going to be anything more than a good player. So that is part of the reason he's not my number 1. But I mean, the guy's terrific, and he scares me because my list was very Canadian heavy, and so that scares me going forward internationally. But it's hard to argue with some of these guys. So
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's you bring up Seguin. It's not my number 1, so he's not in my top 2. He did make my initial list. He was considered. I look at him, and I agree. I think he's got the potential to be a great player. The reason he didn't make my top 10 is because I think his stats are a lot higher this year because of who he's playing with. You know, not to say that, you know, because I think if you put the right guys around a good player, they can become a great player. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's going on with him. I think playing with, I guess he's playing with Jamie Benn.
Ben, yeah. I'm drawing a blank on who else it would be, but Ben would be the main guy.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't. See, now I'm gonna have to look this up, but.
But regardless, what was Boston thinking? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I was never like super like thrilled with Louis Eriksson. I mean, he's okay, but
he fills a need. But when you're trading away a really talented young player because it fills somebody that fills a need, like you can just pick up a free agent at the sort of the bottom of the free agent barrel for that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, Garbett, I guess, is probably who he's playing with on the other side. Who I actually like Ryan Garbett a lot. I think he's a better player than a lot of people give credit for. And
I'm not that familiar with the man's work, so I'm not even going to pretend to.
Yeah, and I think he's getting to learn from a guy. You know, Seguin's centering that top line, but you look at the center on the second line for the Stars, and it's Jason Spezza. I think, you know, a guy who I think has flown under the radar for a long time, partially because he's playing in Ottawa for so long. But yeah. I think a guy who's really helped Seguin, you know, and I don't want to take anything away from Seguin, but if I'm trying to build around a guy, I think he's a guy who would be a great first-line player, but not necessarily someone I would build my franchise around.
Well, he's not my number 1, so at least there's that. All right, so who's your number 1?
Number 1, who I believe is older than anyone on your list, at 25 years of age.
Okay.
Broken his leg, but I don't think that proves any injury history. I put Steven.
I think I know. I think I know what your direction you're going, but go ahead.
Steven Stamkos, I put as my number 1, because I mean, you talked about.
He turned 25 yesterday, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean,
so he and Ekblad have the same birthday.
But I mean, you know, you talked about guys that are just fun to watch play. I mean, you said you had fun watching the Islanders. When the Blues played the Lightning a few nights ago, the Lightning offensively are just fun to watch, period.
Lightning's a good term for them.
Yeah, oh my goodness. And,
the Blues was a good term for them a few years ago, offensively.
Yeah, this is, even at times this year, but...
they're fine.
I digress. But, yeah, I think, Stamkos is just, I think, when I was trying to not give it away earlier when I said there's a guy who you could maybe compare with Ovechkin as far as just pure goal-scoring ability, it's Stamkos. He's the guy, he broke his leg or whatever, but he's come back from that and just been
very
good, yeah. Nothing happened. And
it was a very gruesome injury too. It's not like he just had he was nicked up or anything. It was. It looked like it was going to be bad.
Yeah, he went straight into the post and essentially snapped his leg in half. It looks like. I shouldn't laugh at that. That's not funny at all. But I think honestly, what maybe moved him ahead of MacKinnon on my list was when I was watching the Blues game the other night, and he scrapped with David Backes. You see the size difference between those two guys. And me and you both have been very vocally criticizing David Backes for him starting stupid fights sometimes.
So that's what I'm a little more okay with if he's taking on a guy that's, better than him.
Right. The thing is, Stamkos, he didn't back down. He was like, you know what, screw it, let's go. And then after they broke up or whatever, he came back and he's like, no, shut up. Let's go. And that's the kind of guy I want leading my locker room. He's not going to go out there trying to start stupid stuff, but he's going to stick up for you. Now, granted, taking a 5-minute fighting major or whatever, not the smartest thing when you're that good of a player, but it's the mentality it showed to go along with the skill and ability he has. So if I had any player to pick from the NHL right now, I would pick Stamkos to build my team around.
Yeah, I had Stamkos on my list whenever I was looking through guys. I weighed the injury history, weighed the fact that he was a little bit older than some of the other guys on the list, and when it came down to it, the guy might be the best pure goal scorer in the league, so he's my number one too. Just ruin all that sort of build up. But yeah, the guy is just, he's a delight to watch because I just like when guys score goals. That's what it comes down to. And
you can't not score goals.
The guy was as good as anybody in the league in terms of just overall production a couple of years ago. It slipped last year, obviously, because he was hurt, and this year it's maybe not quite up to the level it was a couple of years ago. But again, he's coming off of a very bad leg injury. And I see no reason this guy's not going to be one of the best players in the league for another decade at least.
Yeah, it's kind of anticlimactic to be the same top guy.
Yeah. Whenever you started previewing that, I was wondering what direction you were going to go, and then as soon as you started mentioning he was 25, he had an injury, I was like, this is going to be boring. Oh, well.
All right. Well, now that we've gotten the top 10 out of the way, I want to ask you a few questions about your 20 list, because we were talking a little bit beforehand. And
I didn't rank the others just to be clear. I just sort of have a list of guys I was considering.
I didn't rank them either, and I'm not curious as to where you put guys necessarily too much. But we both talked about considering a goaltender. Obviously, neither one of us had a goalie in our top 10. So what goaltender were you considering?
It was a goalie that I'm blanking on his name at this very moment. Just 1 second, because that should be an indicator of why I didn't actually put him on the list. But the guy I was considering was Holtby, just because Braden Holtby from the Capitals has improved quite a bit. He's still relatively young. I think there's really only two goalies you could even put much consideration into.
Yeah, the goalie, I did not pick Braden Holtby as my one.
Yeah.
The two guys I considered, the only guy who made my list 20 was Pekka Rinne. I absolutely adore Pekka Rinne.
How old is Rinne?
I believe let me double check. I want to say he's around late 29 to 31, somewhere in that range maybe.
Yeah. Goalies are a little harder because they can play for a long time, but at the same time you're getting less production.
Yeah, but the thing
32.
Is 32. So it's he was old, but I think, obviously health is maybe a concern with him. He's had a few injuries, but, the guy's been a finalist, I think, for the Vezina each of the last, 3 or 4 years.
Oh, he's terrific, yeah.
He's that good. The other guy thought of putting him on the list, but didn't, just because I don't know enough about him to play long, is Frederik Andersen in Anaheim. Young, talented goalie. but I wonder how much of his stats are helped just by playing with the offensive firepower he has, his wins and whatnot. But, I mean, Rinne, last I checked, and he may not be now, but he was, still leading the league in wins despite being injured for, the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I gave at least some consideration to Carey Price as well as far as goalies, but it was sort of one of those things where it's like, oh, he's 27, which isn't too old, but I don't know that he's, the best goalie in the league at this point, at which point if I'm going for somebody that's that old, I probably wouldn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, you'd want to...
Played it safe and just avoided the goalies altogether.
I was kind of upset. I was going to pick Brodeur, but then he retired, so...
Yeah. Well, he's won the cup, so...
He has.
Yeah, looking at some of the guys, one guy I don't know how to consider this guy, and ultimately I figured it was safer to just omit him altogether, is Connor McDavid, who's not even in the NHL, but is the consensus number 1 overall prospect in juniors.
Have you watched any highlights of this guy?
I've seen a couple, but not enough to really evaluate him. So at this point, any evaluation I'd make is basically just hearsay. But the guy's getting hype. It's not quite up to what Crosby's level hype was, but maybe up to what Stamkos or Tavares was.
Yeah, I mean he's good. I mean, fortunately, the first time I remember seeing anything about him was when he, I don't know what it was, had to leave a game because he got into a fight with somebody and hurt his hand.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I remember hearing about that and thinking, nothing I'd heard about this guy indicated that he was a brawler.
No, I mean, it seemed to kind of be very not like him.
Like a little bout of immaturity, which he was probably 17 at the time, so I'm willing to give him a little bit of a pass on that.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't really care if you have a moment of stupidity, as long as you don't injure yourself for the season. You can take a dumb penalty here or there. If you're going to score me 50 goals, I'll deal with the 2 minutes without you. So.
Well, we know who your number 4 on your list was. Okay, I'm done. No, I won't bring it up anymore.
Oh.
Don't worry. I hold no grudge against you.
You let it out. You feel better now?
Yeah. McDavid and Crosby were the 2 guys where I was like, I don't know how to evaluate these guys. One for being too old, one for being too young, and it was like, this is sticky.
Yeah, I mean, McDavid, it's one of those things. He's a complete unknown because you can watch these guys play in juniors, but the NHL is a whole different level. I mean, even if you are a top prospect, it may only take you half the season to acclimate, but, not a lot of guys that are even top picks can necessarily come in right away and do what a Crosby, kind of did, or a Stamkos. They're not necessarily every year things. See Erik Johnson, 2006.
Yeah. But yeah, whenever I was going over who I was, number 10 was sort of the one where I was really unsure of. We ended up going with the same number 10. I was sort of tied between Forsberg. I gave a little consideration to Voracek. Even gave a little consideration to Drew Doughty, even though he's a little bit older. But ultimately, I'm happy with Forsberg. I'm content there.
I mean, I remember over my 11, I went with Forsberg. I actually had a tough time. There were 4 guys that that's why I said Schwartz earlier, because I really think that Jaden Schwartz is a terrific player, more because he's a guy who will play defensively. He'll get down and block shots, and he's really good at stripping the puck from guys from behind.
Very good, well-rounded player. Can't argue with any of that.
And Jonathan Taves was another guy I gave some. I didn't put 2 Hawks on the list. I just put Kane.
Yeah, so. Taves, he wasn't on my list, but I at least thought about him, and ultimately he was like, he's a couple of years older. I'm not that excited about him.
He's a little bit older, but, I mean, I thought about him just because, the guy, he's one of those guys that even though he plays for the Blackhawks, it's like, I don't necessarily know anything that, makes me hate this guy.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and a lot of people do hate him, and I just, I've channeled all of my Blackhawks sentiment towards Kane, so I'm just distracted. I also like the fact that we're talking about how old Taves is. Taves is 9 months older than me. We're acting like he's if he's able to get out of his wheelchair, he's going to be able to play or something. No, he's not very old. He's 26 years old, turning 27 in a couple months. Yeah,
I mean, and then the guy that I don't even know if you even consider this guy, but I almost put him in my top 10, was Max Pacioretty.
I did not consider him, but it's an interesting pick. He's fairly young. He's good, all that.
I mean, he's a guy that, first of all, you talk about just coming back from injury stories like Lewis Stamkos. I mean, have you watched the hit that Chara put on this guy
Yes, I have.
Is that not one of the most brutal things you've watched in your entire life? I mean,
It's not great, and I've always been a big Chara fan, so it pains me to see that. And I was like, oh, wow.
yeah. I mean, he is 26. He's still like 6 little, but no offense, if you have a guy who can come back, I mean, he's got 23 goals this season in 51 games. So I mean, that's going to put him somewhere in the top 10 or 15 in the league. And
It would have been nice to put an American on my list, but I didn't.
hey, I put an American on my list.
Yeah, you did. I'm looking at my list, just trying to remember the nationalities. I have Karlsson and Forsberg are both Swedish. Tarasenko's Russian. I think the rest might be Canadian.
Let's see. I got Nyquist and Forsberg, who are both Sweden. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Ovechkin, Tarasenko.
Get some couple Russians in there.
Russians, and then Kane's American, but then.
So you had 5 Canadians then?
Yeah, Stamkos, MacKinnon, Tavares, Giroux, Crosby. Yeah.
A lot of centers in there. That's my only hope, is that they're just going to have too many centers and it's going to make everybody mad at each other, and therefore Team USA will sneak in a gold medal somewhere in there.
Absolutely. Well,
that's the dream.
Yeah, maybe one of these days. I'd just like to win a medal next time. But,
Yeah, it would be an upgrade. Well, maybe if somebody wasn't hogging the puck on the power play, we would have gotten some goals against Finland and at least gotten the bronze. But, okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. It's like a good time as any to bail out on this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, John. It's a pleasure as always to talk hockey.
All right. It was a pleasure to, get schooled a little bit. Hopefully, learn a little bit. Hopefully, not embarrass myself too much.
No, you held your ground very well, despite your hatred of Patrick Kane. So.
Hold on. My hatred of Patrick Kane is completely founded.
I never said it wasn't.
Okay, all right. Well, those are clear there. Let's have a fake handshake. I'm extending my hand, shaking air in front of my computer right now.
I am as well.
All right, cool. All right, again, thank you for joining me. Thank you to everybody who listened, and have a good day and all that.